So next is everything is connected, but no place is the same. So this is just to get you to think a little bit about how our systems and the kind of spheres that we live and work in, they're actually all interconnected parts of a bigger system. So it's it's quite unhelpful to think very narrowly about things like housing or transport or non-domestic uses. We need to kind of think in the whole about how these things impact on each other. So just to put this into context a little bit, so we've got here a couple of graphics that you will see on the Oldham Energy Futures website. So these are carbon footprints for our two wards. So we've got Coldhurst ward and we've got St James's ward. So you'll see here that the carbon footprint, the pieces of the pie are fairly similar. There's a couple of differences, quite small differences, which relate to the kind of the greyer chunks of the pie. So we've got grey, the very lightest grey relates to other consumption, and the slightly darker grey is kind of consumption of goods and services. So that they're slightly different, but yeah, on the whole, about 40% of the carbon footprint for both of these wards is from energy, heat and transport consumed within the area. So I've got an example here of Oldham just to kind of break this down into slightly easier to see. So when we're presented with breakdowns of emissions or our carbon footprint, everything is quite often neatly divided into these different categories. Now that's helpful, and you can see how that is really helpful at a policy level to be able to focus attention and understand the scale of the challenge. So for example, here we can see, housing is a really big chunk. What can we do about housing? How can we decarbonise, make that lower impact? But what these statistics don't show very well is how kind of interconnected different parts of the system are. So we've got here, this is just using St James's ward first. So we've got carbon footprint, and it's broken down by all these different kind of sectors. So an example might be if we look at transport, in particular private transport. So as we phase out fossil fuels, and indeed this will happen with vehicles, so in a few years' time you won't be able to buy a petrol or diesel-based car. It will have to be a kind of electrically powered car instead. We might also, if we're looking at kind of more active travel options, we're going to hopefully get more and more people using bikes to get around, to commute, to get to school, to do the shopping. And there might be things like e-bikes, so bikes that have got kind of a battery, which gives you a bit of a boost, and it's especially useful if you live in a hilly area. Now those things might add to our domestic electricity load, so for example housing, but they might also add to your non-domestic electricity demand. So you might charge those things at night when you're at home, in which case it's part of your housing consumption, but actually you might also be able to charge it when you're out and about doing your shopping or in a car park or at an office. So these things don't neatly necessarily fit into one category or another. They're likely to be kind of a mix of things. Now this one is showing it Coldhurst ward instead, but you'll see here obviously the figures are fairly similar. And another example might be food and diet. So if, for example, we look to grow a little bit more of our food closer to home, then we're starting to shift some of these carbon footprints into other areas. So, for example, you might decide that you're going to grow a bit more in your own garden, but there might also be opportunities to grow communally at a street or a neighbourhood scale, kind of communal allotments. Okay, so the next few slides are just kind of explaining how those opportunities will be different locally depending on where you are. Also the constraints that are present as well. So they will perhaps throw up different challenges for different neighbourhoods. So the key point really is to get this point across that it's not kind of a one solution fits all, and that this is why projects like this are really important to kind of explore what energy use and opportunities there are locally and how we can best respond to those to get the best out of it. So for example, we've got here This is a fairly suburban location. It's got quite a lot of wide streets. The housing is not particularly dense, and it's kind of a mix of efficiencies. So some of this might have been insulated. This is perhaps not as well connected to public transport, so we might have higher private vehicle use instead. In this location, we've got kind of older, probably 1900s, stone-built terraces. So obviously these buildings are older. They're probably a bit more inefficient to heat and power, and they will have a different challenge. If you wanted to insulate a building like that, it would be a little bit different to how you might insulate the housing on the slide previously. There's other factors as well here. So we've got slightly maybe more dense rows of terraces, different amounts of space around them, different things that you might be able to do with the streets. And also this one is, this particular example is just off a main junction that contains kind of a lot of buses. So obviously maybe connecting to public transport is more of a thing in this location and an opportunity. And then if we get a bit closer into the centre of Oldham, we've also got sites like this. So we've got, particularly dense housing where we've got, hundreds of apartments in one building. And, the opportunities there to do stuff around communal heating or insulating a lot of properties at once are different. And we've also got, other things with public transport like the Metrolink as well. And in some cases, we're not going to have, we're going to have quite a mix of uses. So on this particular street, we've got a church. We've also got at a ground floor level, lots of non-domestic uses. So we've got retail, offices, and then above that, we've got flats as well. So there's kind of people living and working in the same space. And we've also got a Metrolink running down the middle of the street. Things are connected, and it's important to see the relationships between different things when we look at different strategies for how we might reduce energy consumption and respond to some of the challenges around the energy system. But these are all going to throw up opportunities and challenges which are very place specific.